Today on Inspired Money.
The very first investor from our first round, which we would call our pre-seed, whatever that means. He's this awesome guy here in Louisville, and we met for coffee, and he within 5 minutes was like, "I'll give you $10,000, no matter what." And I was like, "Okay, great. So this is fundraising," and we needed a lot more than $10,000, but he said, "I write $10,000 checks." And that perks up people who write much larger checks. And he's like, "Trust me, I know it's not a lot, but this is like how I operate, and I think I can help you." And so I've, of course, said, "Yes, please." Amazing.
This is episode 131 with the CEO of Podchaser, Bradley Davis. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If this is your first time here, welcome. One of the recurring themes of Inspired Money is the power of taking an idea and turning it into a business. And I think that with technology, the process of starting a business has changed. In today's gig economy, you can start small, test your idea, and see if it grows. And that's why I'm so excited about our guest, Bradley Davis. He's a young entrepreneur in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm guessing that he's not even 30 yet. He's CEO of a 3-year-old startup called Podchaser. Podchaser says it's the definitive podcast database listing all podcasts, past, present, and future. It's been called the IMDb of podcasting. So where imdb.com is a searchable database that includes millions of movies, TV programs, as well as information about cast and crew members, apply that to podcasting. A ton of money is pouring into podcasting right now as the industry speeds towards becoming $1 billion market by 2021. That's up from $479 million generated in 2018. In this episode, you'll learn how Podchaser started as a side hustle for Bradley, with several co-founders and contractors, some of whom have still not yet met in person, fundraising from scratch, and Podchaser recently successfully closed on a $1.65 million seed round. Why Bradley's excited to be heading Podchaser, and how fundraising is changing his views on money. Now let's get inspired with Bradley Davis. Bradley, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
So I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had a tangerine tree in my backyard. When I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old, I got a bunch of tangerines and squeezed them into what must have been used Coke bottles or something like that, and added sugar and water and made what had to be the most disgusting tangerine drink in the world. And I went door to door in my cul-de-sac and sold them to really nice old people for 5 to 10 cents. And I remember thinking that I was going to be rich because my tangerine tree just kept producing tangerines. And so if I could sell my tangerine juice, then I could just, I guess, be a millionaire. So I guess my lesson when I was 6 was that you can use, your resources, in this case, a tangerine tree, and turn it into something and then sell it. So that's my earliest memory of money, because I was making money.
That's an early start, because I've seen the term serial entrepreneur associated with your name. And I also know that you have a background in sales. So it sounds like it started pretty early.
I think my main driver to start companies and to experiment has just been that I hate working. I hate working for people a lot. And I've been very fortunate to have some really good bosses. But even then, with the best boss ever, I was like, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do because you're telling me to do it. So yeah, that goes back way early in my poor parents. And I think that that's what's really inspired me to try my own thing, was just that I was always really unhappy working in an office setting, a traditional office setting, and that really spurred me to try new things.
So you're a co-founder of Podchaser. What was the gap that you saw in the podcasting world that put this idea and company into motion?
As you mentioned, I was in a sales position. I was doing outside sales, specifically industrial sales. And I was driving all the time and listening to podcasts like daily for several hours. My personal frustration was just that it was really difficult for me to determine whether a podcast or an episode within a podcast would be good before I listened to it. And when I looked searching on the internet for solutions to this problem, I really didn't find much. And so to me, what I was looking for was a Goodreads or Letterboxd or IMDb sort of crowdsourced directory that would give me information as far as, who's involved in this podcast, but also, is it any good? And I really couldn't find much at the time. And so I posted on Reddit and was like, hey, does this exist? If not, would anybody want to build it with me? And that's how Podchaser started. We started on a Reddit thread.
I hear you're a big Reddit fan.
I think like most Redditors, it's a very much love-hate relationship. But yes, I'm a daily Reddit user. And if it weren't for Reddit, Podchaser would have never existed. So I'm thankful for it.
Is the idea of starting a company or even posing that follow-up question, is there someone out there that wants to do this with me? Like, is that a crazy idea?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I would not recommend this method of sourcing founders to work with. It was very, very lucky. Timing was perfect. There were several people who responded to that specific Reddit thread, many of which were not smart people who thought they were very smart. And so even from then, I think 10 people were messaging with me privately and getting through those people. And the one that Ben, our CTO, the one that is, still the CTO and built the entire company from the technical side, when he responded, he was like, I don't think I had that much time, but this is kind of interesting. And when I read the response, was like, this guy's not for real. Like, this is not going to work out. So yeah, it's crazy. I think what's interesting there is that I do that form of outreach and discovery all the time. And so for every 100 times I message somebody on Twitter or Reddit and say like, hey, you want to start a company? For every 100 times I do that, maybe once it would work out. And even that time, the time it did work out with Podchaser, I still think it was crazy fortunate because I see so many startups that have founder drama that really prevents them from growing and scaling. And with our team, we knock on wood, we've had really zero in cultural issues within the company. And it was just luck. Like, we just found some great guys in Australia who I've still never met, who, we get along great. So yeah, to answer your question, it's crazy.
And you're almost 4 years in now.
Yep.
When you're having those initial phone calls, and I'm assuming you may trade emails, but eventually you're going to get on Zoom or on the phone and have a conversation. How quickly can you ascertain, is this person good, or is this is not going to work at all?
It's pretty easy because 99.9% of people are idiots. And that I'm exaggerating, but working in a startup is not, in many ways, is not great. It's hard. You tend to make less money, of course, with the hopes that you'll make more money in the long run. But a lot of people want to be in a startup or think they want to be in a startup. And then when it comes to actually doing the work and then realizing, oh, I'm not going to get paid for how long? For a year? That makes it really easy to test someone's mettle early on. And so I've always approached it kind of like dating, where you get with a a potential founder or co-founder or whatever. And you just start building the thing. With Podchaser, it started on a Google Doc. We just started kind of charting out what this sort of product could be, who would want it, what's the market like. And a bunch of the guys who were there at the beginning would not contribute to the Google Doc and would not respond to emails, or they had really bad ideas, in my opinion. So it was pretty easy to weed them out. And one thing that we did that I think ended up being smart, as far as equity assignment, we waited a really long time to do that. If you just split things down the middle or split things in thirds or however it works out, that can get really sticky really fast. And so, especially when you're bootstrapping a startup, somebody might be working a job that's 70 hours a week. Somebody might be working a job that's 30 hours a week. And so people have different time allocations they can contribute, different talents, different elements that they contribute to the business. And so we waited a long time and kind of dated each other, and then sat down and said, okay, this is serious. Now let's assign equity and get going.
How much time did pass before you sat down and reviewed equity assignments?
I'd say there were 8 or 9 Podchaser almost founders, and then it boiled down to 3. And then I think maybe 6 months later, we then split up equity, and then we ended up adding a 4th co-founder, I think 6 months after that. So we ended up with 4 co-founders, and then timing's also part of equity assignment. If you join later, it's harder to get more. So yeah, it was a long process for sure.
What was the vision in the very early days when you were talking to CTO Ben? How has that evolved over the last 4 years?
It really started as, we want to be a ratings platform that you can use on any device. That was a very simple version 1 of Podchaser. And our model was IMDb, and also Letterboxd was always an inspiration. I've always enjoyed the Letterboxd product. And so what I did was I went out and found one of the earlier employees at IMDb and the founder of Letterboxd, and harassed them on LinkedIn and said, can you please help me? So that was the earliest version, was just ratings and reviews. And then it evolved into a more mature product that has now evolved into essentially being the informational source for all of podcasting. So that encompasses a lot of things: metadata, credits, ratings and reviews, custom lists, all kinds of elements to the site. But it still kind of follows the original vision, which was, we want to be the go-to place to find podcasts. And a big part of that was from a Google search. Podcast discovery happens a lot of times by Googling things like, what are the best episodes of XYZ? That was a big part of our business. So that's why we decided we wanted to be a web application, because we felt that search traffic and organic discovery was going to be really important to us. It's evolved into a lot of things, but the first version was essentially ratings and reviews. On an episode level, I should mention that, because that was, at the time, we were the only company that was even, I think, thinking about that, was let's get feedback on the episode level.
Well, I feel like even with the work that you guys are doing, it's still not easy trying to find episode level recommendations. And you see people asking that on Twitter and on social media all the time. Like, I have a road trip and I'm looking for recommendations, episodes, not podcasts. And the responses I see, they're not taking advantage of any tool or platform. They're just listing them, and it's hard to share that.
It's a pain in the butt. And I think that our goal is to get our rating system in as many applications as possible, so that critical mass continues to grow, and then we can have more and more of those episode level recommendations. Because it's a matter of just numbers. More and more people need to contribute to a platform for it to be useful. It's education. It's behavior changing. It's podcasters working with us to say, rate and review me on Apple Podcasts and Podchaser. Since we started, our monthly ratings and reviews are up, 100x, but we needed to keep going and getting that higher and higher for it to be more and more useful, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to let this slip by. You're reaching out to the founders of IMDb and Letterboxd. How valuable has that been for you?
Very valuable. And that's a good question because many people reach out to me, especially now that we've raised some capital and saying like, I want to be your advisor or I want to be an investor or I want to be something. And so a lot of people who, in my opinion, are probably much smarter than me, reach out and offer things like advice. The issue is that even though they're probably smarter than me in many ways, they are definitely not going to contribute the same amount of time and depth that I have with Podchaser. It's something that we discuss internally in the company is how often do you put on blinders and just do the work and build a product that your users love? And how often do you consult with IMDb and Letterboxd and say, hey, what did you do or what would you do? And so it's, I think, difficult to establish a balance between the two. And so with IMDb and Letterboxd, they have domain expertise that certainly helps and has a lot to do with Podchaser. So those guys have been very helpful. But yeah, sometimes it's very easy to get distracted and things like, feature creep, but feature creep from external sources telling you, hey, you should do it this way because I think that's a good idea. They've done 10 minutes of research on a podcast or whatever. Yeah, I think picking advisors has been very helpful, opened a lot of doors for us as a company and helped a lot. But I think at the same time, it's been important, and I'm learning more to take all the data in that you can from external sources, but not let it guide you. Let it just supplement your existing kind of vision.
So are you currently at 4 founders? How many advisors do you have?
We have 4 founders and 4 advisors because we just added 2.
And IMDb, I'm of course familiar with it. I've used it, but I don't know how they exited. I think does Amazon own them now?
Yeah, Amazon bought them really early. And so the guy that is our advisor, he was an Amazon employee, and he was the 7th employee at IMDb/Amazon and was their head of revenue and monetization. So that was our contact there. But yeah, they it's really interesting because IMDb is very valuable in the fact that it's a third party that you kind of trust as a consumer. But it's owned by a publisher. It's owned by Amazon. But Amazon did a good job of, I think, separating the brand out so that it's still obviously beneficial to Amazon owning that asset, but IMDb is still able to function as its own entity. And so they did a good job with that.
With podcasting, it's so decentralized. And I think that podcast listeners have appreciated that fact, since the advent of podcasts, that anyone can create a show and then you're not subject to the rules of a single platform like YouTube with videos. You can create your audio content and then kind of publish it all over the place. Is that part of the opportunity for Podchaser? Because it's that ratings, but independent of any platform or device.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of in our DNA as a company is the fact that we recognize podcasting as a free and open media vertical, despite what the market is, I think, trying to turn it into. And so, yeah, I think that coincides really well with what we try to do, which is be impartial, open, and not biased towards a specific publisher or platform. So, yeah, I think that it'll be really interesting to see the future of podcasting and where it's going. Because right now it's certainly heading towards consolidation and corporate takeover. It's fun to watch. I'm not sure what will happen. I think that doing that to podcasting is going to be a lot more difficult than other media verticals that have been used to kind of the consolidation, like cable TV, for example. Like that was how it's always been. But with podcasting, it's totally different. So yeah, it's interesting, and we'll see what happens.
Talk about fundraising. I know at the outset your vision didn't include raising venture capital money. How did that happen? Was there an inflection point where you realized that is a path that you should go down?
Yeah, essentially we all had jobs. And so when we started building Podchaser, I never, envisioned this giant, amazing company. To me, it was just this fun project that we'd see what happened. But as soon as we launched it, we got really amazing feedback and really amazing participation and fans like from the podcasting community. So we realized that we were onto something. And then it got to the point where we had so many goals within the product that in order for us to accomplish those goals, we needed to be dedicating more time to it. And Podchaser's value is in the contribution from its users, and the monetization of the product is not efficient until you have plenty of input from users. So for that reason, we were not able to, and we really didn't want to monetize the product really early. So venture capital made a lot of sense. We wanted to be able to grow, and then monetize it after the fact. And so that's when we realized we needed to take investment, was when we realized it was a big opportunity. All the reports, like the Edison, Triton, all those reports for like podcasting is exploding, and more people are looking to us as a tool that would be integral in supporting that growth. And so that's when it made sense to raise money.
And how hard has that been? How did you get started? Since I know that you had previous experience with startups, but this was the first time that you were trying to fundraise.
I had zero experience with fundraising. Honestly, in my previous startup life, I didn't even really understand it. I didn't understand that people would give you money, and then you can just do what you want with the money. Obviously, that's an oversimplification. But yeah, I knew nothing about it. I don't know where I started. I Googled around and researched it, and our first round was smaller, and it was what rich people call a family and friends round. My family and friends, bless them, but they don't have $100,000 disposable income to throw around. So I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, so I went to the local small business chamber sorts of organizations and just started kind of asking around and saying like, hey, what does a fellow have to do around here to raise money? And was just bounced around to a lot of people that had no clue what I was talking about, but then, eventually got in touch with the right people. My fundraising path was certainly one that was it was all networking. So like one person would introduce me to the next person who introduced me to the next person. And that's how it worked. It was totally networking from the beginning.
Like starting out locally in Kentucky.
Yeah. So a guy here who does a lot of investment introduced me to a guy in Brooklyn who's from Louisville. And then he introduced me to a bunch of guys in New York. And I pitched the vision and we raised the money. It was very difficult and a great learning experience. And the old adage that, life is sales, everything is sales, is certainly the case for fundraising. You have to follow up. You have to think of reasons to follow up, like, oh, great news. We grew X% this month. Hey, so where's my money? So it was certainly a difficult journey, and I learned a lot through it. And then what was cool was in the second round, I did a lot of cold outreach to VCs, investors, and honestly, what ended up making it possible was inbound, which is honestly, like I said, it's depressing because it makes me feel like all my outbound stuff was a waste of time. But people started just seeing the product out in the wild, whether it's social media or LinkedIn or whatever, and approaching me. And that's when it was like, oh, this is great. This is way better than me. Like, hi, my name is Bradley with Podchaser. And this like pitch template that I sent out to 5 billion people. I would message people on Twitter and LinkedIn and email databases, Rocket Reach, like all kinds of. I must have pitched hundreds, if not thousands, of investors. And my co-founder also helped me a lot with outreach, Cole. So yeah, fundraising is not fun, and it's really, really difficult to separate an investor's opinion on your company from your own evaluation of your self-worth and kind of separating the two. And I think because I came from sales and had been told no a billion times. It was a good transition, but yeah, it sucks. And when you poured your life into a product and think it's important and think it's valuable, and then somebody within 5 minutes is like, yeah, this is not a very sustainable model, pass. It sucks, but that's part of it. And you have to do it hundreds of times. So yeah, fundraising is great.
Coming up, we learn how Bradley hits his fundraising target in the most recent fundraising round, his developing views on money, the fun, addictive nature of building a business. All that and more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/131. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Bradley, Podchaser, and other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Today, I want to give you an investing concept because investing is one of the best ways to grow your money. In the near term, you'll be subject to volatility. That's the ups and downs of the stock market. But if history is a gauge, over the long term, it can be rewarding and you can literally be making money while you sleep. I want to talk about the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72 is a quick, useful formula that you can use to estimate the number of years required to double your invested money. Here's the formula. Years to double equals 72 divided by the interest rate. So what's it good for? Well, if I tell you that you made 8% in a year, you might say, great, I'm up. With the Rule of 72, you can have a reference point, a rough estimate of how much time it will take to double your money. In this example, take 72 divided by 8, which equals 9. If you invest $1,000 that grows 8% every year, you'll have $2,000 in year 9, $4,000 in year 18, $8,000 in year 27, and so on. As you can see, the formula is useful for understanding the effect of compound interest. This is one of the reasons why Warren Buffett advocates owning a company like Coca-Cola, a steady growth company, over something that's more speculative, that might be a home run, but it could also go bankrupt. Investing in high-quality companies that are likely to grow and less likely to go out of business can grow your money consistently over time. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. So what's your biggest financial challenge right now? If you have a question or you just want to send me a note, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy to email me directly. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. Any cool stories about landing the first investor or somewhere along this fundraising journey?
Yeah, a couple stories. So we had all the right people who wrote much larger checks. And so that was I just remember leaving the coffee meeting and calling my co-founder and being like, well, I guess it worked, like $10,000. And we were freaking out and really excited. So then fast forward to the most recent round, and we had raised $1 million, and then we had roughly $500,000 left. Actually, we had raised $1.1 million. We need $400,000 because we wanted to raise $1.5 million. So I was pitching an investor, a local investor, and somebody came with me who was an LP in a fund that had already invested. I went in, and the guy who was with me said, you don't even need to go through your pitch deck. Like this guy, you just need to explain your vision. And the guy came in and didn't quite even understand podcasting. He's a very smart guy, but he wasn't up to speed on podcasting. So I explained, this is podcasting versus radio. This is what we want to do. This is how we think we can grow, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was like 10 minutes And he said, okay, well, I'll give you $200,000. And I was like, what? I did not open a pitch deck. I had gone through the site for 5 minutes, and the guy I brought with me said, he's like, you know what? How about you do 250,000 and I'll do 150,000. And then that's the 400 and he can just be done with it. And he said, okay. And I'm just sitting here like, what, who are these people? This is insane. This is insane. So, left, and the week later, the money was wired because I didn't believe them. I was like, I've fought tooth and nail for $10,000 checks or $25,000 checks. So the fact that these guys would so quickly do that. And he said, I like you, and that's how I make investments. And I said, okay, I like you too. Great. The fundraising journey is crazy. And those are two examples of things that were really entirely unexpected. And so it was honestly amazing how I barely even went to that meeting because had been rescheduled and I wasn't sure if this was the right fit. And so, yeah, I tend to take every meeting nowadays that I can with people because you just never know what the outcome can be.
How has your perspective on money changed going through this process?
Honestly, my view of money is certainly one that is being developed because this has just totally thrown off all of my ideas about the value and of a hard-earned dollar. A lot of it boils down to things that I would say are outside the bounds of meritocracy and have a lot to do with social pressure, with timing, with a blend of persistence and luck. And yeah, so that's changed my view of money. Of course, I'm not speaking of any existing Podchaser investors, but of other investors. When I say that a lot of the investors I've met who have a lot of money aren't that special, aren't that unique, or aren't that great. A lot of it's been inherited. A lot of it's been, and they'll admit it too, to say like, yeah, I'm worth $100 million, and I got really lucky in the '90s during the internet bubble. Unless you're born into wealth, I think the common denominator is some sort of like of industriousness or work ethic, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's really because I'm obsessed. I ask all these people I meet with, how did you do it, and was it worth it, and has wealth changed your life? And the answers I get, and you probably have had some experiences with your podcast, the answers I get are vary so wildly that it's really difficult to pinpoint what does money mean to these people, and then what does it mean to me, and how did they get it, and did they deserve it, or does it matter if they deserve it? So yeah, to me, it's a very abstract, bizarre topic. I don't know the answer.
Well, I'm hearing the power of momentum when it comes to fundraising. It is indeed like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with both our rounds of financing, once we got a lead investor who basically set the terms for the round and stuck their necks out for us, had done diligence, then it becomes much easier. And people we're social animals, and we like to follow the lead of somebody else, and so that has a lot to do with fundraising. Should it? Like, is that smart analytically? Probably not, but that's, I think, in my experience, which is very limited, that's how it works. People have FOMO and like to follow their peers who they respect. That's
part of due diligence, right? Because if people you trust are investing, then you say, okay, that gives me some feeling of safety in numbers.
Yeah, feeling of safety and feeling and fear of missing out. Powerful feelings.
So tell us more about, once you got funded, it allows you to quit your job. Podchaser is no longer a side hustle for you. It's something that you can do full time. Are there newer pressures that come into play because you have to think differently? Because you're building a business on behalf of investors and not just a small team of founders?
Actually, interestingly, we all quit our jobs at different times. So I didn't quit my job until after we raised the money. My thought there was I am able to fulfill the requirements of my day job and make them happy and feel good about it myself, and then still have enough time to fundraise and to take meetings and make that work. That was made possible because of my position as an outside salesperson. So my schedule was flexible enough to make that work. And then, I quit my job a few months after the first raise. But my line of logic was, if I can not draw a salary for as long as possible, then this money will last longer and the company's success goes up. So then, once you do quit, from my position, especially, I think then it gets like a little scary because it's like, okay, now X amount of people who have families are now depending on this money. So it's my job and really everyone's job to be good stewards of that money and to make sure it gets us to our goals so that we can monetize and or raise more money to support the business. So pressure is definitely on. It's a very, for me, these people like looked me in the eye and trusted me with their money. And I take that very seriously. And so I want to make them happy. And I think a lot of humans probably share this to where we just want to make people happy. And I definitely feel that. And it's crazy to me that some founders take on capital and, go nuts with it and spend it in stupid ways. And so I just can't believe people can do that. I can't. So definitely increased pressure, and it's been interesting to go through that. It's an emotional roller coaster, especially when you're between rounds. That was not a fun period. It definitely changes kind of your outlook when between working full time and then going full time on the with the startup capital.
You guys have a virtual team that's spread out all over the world. It sounds like. What does that all look like? Do you have a physical office, or you don't need one?
We don't have a physical office. We have 2 founders in Australia, 2 founders in the States, and we've never met the Australian founders still, which is crazy. And I think it's a running joke that we'll just never meet them, and that's part of the magic. So there's definitely specific challenges with 100% virtual work, but to me, it's totally worth it because we're building a tech platform. We're not like manufacturing shoes or something. So to me, there's no need for it. I think that the cost benefit well outweighs the potential synergy benefits to working in an office, because there are benefits to that. There certainly are benefits to being physically in the same space as somebody else. I won't deny that, but I think I can manufacture that with the 6 months of runway I save from not renting out an office. So to me, it's worth it. And I do get with with Cole often in person, and it's always helpful. And we do things like, we'll be going to the podcast conferences and seeing each other there. But we still haven't met the Australians. So I don't know when that will happen. But using technology, using things like Slack and Trello and Scrum ideology, organizing the crap out of the system makes it work for us.
What kind of unique or fun things do you have to do as CEO to get that synergy when your main tools are Slack and Zoom, and you're not sitting in an office and able to just pop in to your office mate next door and say, hey, let's talk about marketing?
Great question. I don't know. I think that by how we communicate via Slack mainly, we've created a culture that is very critical. And because I'm a very critical person, but I think that's been very important for any amount of success we've had, because everyone feels very comfortable expressing their dissenting opinions. And that means that when we release something, it's had a bunch of brains on it that have said, okay, that's good enough to ship, versus other cultures where you're scared to death to bring up a problem or bring up an issue. And so, our organizational structure is very flat. I wish you could just do that forever, but unfortunately, that presents its own issues. But we certainly don't have a culture of approvals and of chain of command. Like that's none of that. So it's a very critical but constructive culture, and one that was just set from the beginning. I think by nature of the personalities of the founders, that kind of gelled together really well, and then that permeates through with new hires and contractors. So probably something I could do better at is being more intentional with things like culture. But again, we've just gotten very fortunate, I think, with the personalities involved so far.
You guys have done a great job with building and developing community and taking advantage of that, because you can ask your community what kind of features they want. How can you improve the platform? It seems like podcast creators are kind of like the first line. They get on there and they're like, okay, I want to build out my profile. I can share what shows I've guested on, what shows that I've hosted on or edited. How many podcast fans are on the platform? And is that easier or difficult to cultivate?
It's harder. I think that of our user base, 60 to 70% are 67% are listeners. The remaining 30 to 40% are podcasters. So obviously that is not a very good sample of the population. There are not that many podcasters in the world. So they're definitely our first line. And the theory was they will spread this to their fans. That has worked sometimes, but there's challenges there. Like there's education challenges. Like, how do I best use your platform to grow my show or to engage my fans? And so that's something that we're focusing on now is how do we better engage and better provide features for podcasters to give them a good reason to use our tools. I definitely didn't think that would be the case. I thought it was going to be way easier to find podcast listeners because you can make lists and you can follow people and you can do a bunch of nerdy organization of your podcasting life and follow other people who are also podcast nerds. And that has started to take off more. But historically, certainly, podcasters are the first people and definitely the most active people. And so it's been our goal to increase the other side of this with more podcast listeners.
I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
For what? For me personally?
Yeah, both. I think you personally, and then also as a company.
For the company, success is being the information source for podcasting, meaning organizing it, providing data to all the platforms, and to be a third-party service that lifts and professionalizes the entire industry. We think that's very important, and we think we're well on our way to become that person. So for Podchaser, that's the goal. That's a very top-level answer that informs a lot of things that would need to go right for that to happen. But I think we're doing all that we need to be doing, and hopefully it continues to grow. Personally, success to me is autonomy and freedom. To me, money is just a way to buy that. Meaning, the ability to spend more time with family, to attend more events that interest you, to travel more, to enjoy your family, spouse, whatever more, and not be like freaking out about paying your rent or mortgage. So success to me would be to be in a position to where I don't have to think about that. I'm definitely not in that position now. I hope I get to that position. And then I also, when I introspect late at night, I also am fearful that the goalposts are going to keep moving as I succeed more. And so I try to be really cognizant of kind of maintaining the same definition of success for myself, but it's evolving. I don't know. I mean, what about you? What is success for you?
Well, I think that the goalposts are moving no matter what you're doing or what your goals are. It's just evolving all the time. That's why your goals move too.
Right.
I think it's important to figure out the things that matter to you and what your priorities are. So you mentioned family and spending time with family. And I'm hearing from what you're saying is that you want some degree of financial freedom so that you're not beholden to have to go in and sit at a desk where you're going to feel miserable every day.
Yep.
And I think that, those things considered, it's like, how do you make your money matter? How can you support causes that are important to you, or do things with your family that you enjoy, whether that's just taking a trip or going to the park?
Right. And then I say that, but then like my dopamine centers are going nuts when I'm working on Podchaser. So I love doing it. And so like Podchaser sold tomorrow for $1 billion. To me, like logically, it's like, okay, I'm done. Like I'm not going to start another company. But I think the truth is that I would probably do it again over and over and over and over because it's fun. It's addictive to try new things, build new things, explore new tech, and it's just fun. So yeah, I don't know. I think about that a lot. I think, why am I doing this? And why am I not like a consultant or something? And why do I put myself through this misery all the time? And I think to me, I had to feel a sense of challenge on a daily basis to feel something, I guess. So yeah, it's something that I think about really often. What success looks like for myself. And I think ultimately my answer is I don't know. And I just do it day by day. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's honest. Well, thank you for sharing your inspired money story and the story of Podchaser. I mean, it's super exciting because I think that the timing is right. You're in a space that's growing, and potentially Podchaser could be a massive home run financially down the road. You don't know.
We'll see.
It's exciting to watch, and we look forward to seeing more and more features coming out. I know that you guys just announced the Connect feature to put podcasters and guests together. So a lot of new things coming out on the platform. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where to find out more about Podchaser and you, and how they can follow you?
So the best place to follow Podchaser is Twitter. We're very active on Twitter, probably too active on Twitter. Our handle is @Podchaser. And you can always email me, Bradley@podchaser.com, if you have any ideas or insight, if you want to work for us. It's great. All of our recent hires have been Podchaser users. So it's great. That's the best way to do it. So, and then we have a community Slack channel you can join and ask questions, and we tend to be fairly active responding there. But yeah, I'd start to follow Podchaser on Twitter. That's the easiest way.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? This was a really fun one. It was exciting to see what Bradley, his co-founders, and team are building. If Podchaser sold for $1 billion, would he do it again? Probably. That was my favorite inspired money moment. He would do it over and over because it's fun. And I like that he was honest too. It's not all glorious. Despite it being difficult and even at times miserable, he needs to feel that challenge on a daily basis. Here's to hoping that Podchaser does exit for a big dollar amount so that we can see what happens. If you like this episode, please go to podchaser.com and leave a rating and review for Inspired Money. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll even read it in a future show. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, message me on Instagram @inspiredmoney.fm. That's instagram.com/inspiredmoney.fm. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope that you'll do it now so that you won't miss next week's show. I'll see you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.